Welcome to Advocacy Politics Unplugged, the show that will dissect critical policy issues, explore the art of advocacy in politics, and share insights on how to make your voice heard in today's ever-changing political landscape. I'm your host, John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Business Council of Westchester. Our guest today is Al Samuels, who is the CEO of the Rockland Business Association. Before I tell you a little bit about Al, let me tell you why I thought it was so important for him to be a guest on today's show. In my 30 plus years in government, when I've looked at what the true characteristics should be for an advocate, a lobbyist, someone who is really trying to be the voice for other people who need their voices heard in government, there are a few things that I always say have to be in a skill set. One is knowledge of the issue. The other is passion, being passionate about why you are advocating on behalf of someone else. And then the third is street smarts. And when we talk about Al Samuels, he has all three: knowledge, passion, and definitely street smarts. And let me tell you a little bit more about him. As I said, he's the CEO of the Rockland Business Association. He joined that organization in 1998 as the Director of Government Affairs, Membership, and Small Business Development, and he became president in 2001 and later assumed the role of CEO. Al's earlier positions include being the owner and president of Darvik Associates, a New York City-based recruiting firm for the periodical publishing business, and editor and associate publisher of Footwear News and Fairchild Publications, a business paper. He's also served as the news editor of the Supermarket News and several roles of Metalwork News and also Fairchild Properties. In the mid-1980s, Al was president of the American Rodeo Association, and at that time it was the largest regional rodeo association in the country. For the past 17 years, he has served on the board of the Volmetric Fund, a mutual fund based in Pearl River, New York, and he also has served as co-chair of the Government and Board of Development Committee. He's also served on the Business School Advisory Committee at Dominican University and is a member of the Presidential Search Committee at Rockland Community College. In 2011, Al was appointed a voting member of the Governor's Mid-Hudson Regional Economic Development Council and has served as a member of that council's executive committee. Al, thanks for coming, crossing the bridge. We know it was not an easy travel, but we're so glad because you are one of our favorite people at the BCW.
Well, I thank you for having me. I thank you for those kind words, and I think I'm going to leave because I don't know how to follow up to all of that.
No, we'll keep you here for a while. So, look, we just told our listeners your history, how many years you've been doing this. Tell
40.
us why.
Well, 40.
Tell us why. I mean, every day you wake up with issues that your members are concerned about, and you have to go to bat for them. But tell us what motivates you to do that.
So that I've been doing for a quarter of a century, but I've been involved in advocacy for 15 years before that in different fields. I absolutely believe that somebody has to look out for us, whoever the us happens to be for me at that moment in time. So today the us, and for the past almost 30 years, it's been the business community of Rockland County, but even beyond that, for the region as well, and therefore the state. Or it was because when I was president of the American Rodeo Associations, cowboys could take care of themselves, but it usually would mean waiting around the corner with a 2x4, and I knew that that just didn't work. So I felt that I had the willingness. I guess that's the first thing. You need to have a willingness to put yourself out there, because there are times, and I'd like to share a couple of them because I think they're really interesting. There are times when you're confronted with a circumstance that you hadn't expected, or you are confronted with resistance from folks that you thought might be on your side of an issue. And when you deal with communities like we do, John, where they're so diverse in their political, positions, well, let me just add, some years ago, we had a PAC, and I dissolved it. I just didn't think that it was working, in my county, in Rockland County, because no matter what it is we take a position on, we're going to alienate more people. Perhaps, than we encourage. And you have to be willing to take that on. And So again, it's a willingness to put yourself out there. It's an understanding that it's a necessary evil. It's also something that can bring great gratitude, and you have to have the passion for it. And I thank you for that, because I feel I do.
Well, I mean, again, it's the knowledge, the passion, and the street smarts. So let's stick with street smarts for a second. You just talked about there were some issues that you had to really step up to the plate to help your members. Can you give us an example of
Yeah,
what
I'll
some of
give
those
you
were?
one. Rockland County is now somewhere over 337,000 in population, and we're the smallest landmass county, in the state, except for the 5 boroughs in the city. And we have infrastructure issues, and water is a major infrastructure issue that we have. So some time back, the water company at that time, different ownership than we have today, was looking at desalination as a solution to our problems. Wreaked havoc with the environmental community, brought to the forefront a number of elected officials who saw that cohort as being one they wanted to attach to because it was good politics for them. It had nothing at all to do with the issue, and they could be very effective. They truly can. So I remember one night at North Rockland High School. It was 11 o'clock. We still hadn't gone through all of the presenters. A young woman with an infant in her arms went before the panel and ultimately ended with, "Please don't kill my baby." People were afraid that because of our proximity to Indian Point, desal would never work. And then the next speaker was me. Now, I'm old enough to remember vaudeville when they used to say you don't want to follow an animal or a kid act. That was nothing compared to this. How do you follow this young woman who really thought that this would kill her baby? I believe that she believed what she was saying. And so I had to address that. And you only have a couple of seconds to think, how are you going to do that? Well, I wasn't going to be apologetic. I was going to try and be instructional. And I shared with her that at that moment in time, the water that was coming through the test facility in West Haverstraw was actually purer than the water we were being given to drink. And, I said, no one is looking, to kill your baby. The truth of the matter is, to this day, there are people who were in that room to whom I am persona non grata. They felt that I was dismissive of the panic, the belief that this young mother had. Well, I didn't expect that, but I addressed it as I thought I should, honestly, openly, and in an instructional manner rather than in some apologetic manner.
You're listening to Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, part of the BCW Podcast Network. Our guest this afternoon is Al Samuels, who's the president and CEO of the Rockland Business Association. Let's stick with something you just said, because I think it is something that all of us who advocate on behalf of others have to deal with, and that's parceling out fact from fiction, perception from reality. And you just mentioned the whole issue, and you and I, for many, many years, sat late at night at hearings for the relicensing of Indian Point. And we heard some of the genuine concerns that communities who lived near the plant had. And then we were faced, as you said, with the challenge of just talking about the reality of what happens. Are there other examples that you have had to use where you've really had to take a breath and say, respectfully, you're wrong on the facts, and let me tell you why?
All the time.
Okay.
So those years that we served, and you folks, Dr. Gordon got me involved with New York area, and those were 11 of the best years I had because I really believed in what we were doing. I got to meet people who were involved with the atomic energy program, the atomic subs. I got to meet people who taught me a lot. And going up against the environmental community here in the Hudson Valley is no small task. These are brilliant people, and they know their subject area. They're just wrong.
Yep.
And you have to believe that, going in. And I can remember that, I don't know about you, I think it was true with you as well. We were usually at the end of the evening.
They tried to wait us out.
They were hoping to wait us out, right? I do remember that. And you have to take that into consideration, and you have to stay relaxed. Now, I know you just got a sign.
No. We're
about
just
time because I wanted to give you an example in another area.
We have a lot, and even if we go over,
okay,
it's my show, so we can do whatever we want. So don't worry about that. Look, again, we talked about Indian Point. That's one example, but there are some obviously issues now that you're dealing with your members. We are still seeing our businesses on both sides of the bridge reemerging from the pandemic, dealing with the challenges that businesses, whether they be small, non-for-profits, or larger businesses, are dealing with on a daily basis. As we go into the next legislative session in Albany, what are some of the things that you're going to be focusing on?
Okay, so there are some really prime areas that are of concern in Rockland County. Rockland County has a $40 million a year value gap with the MTA, and we have suffered that for many years. So priority number one right now for the business community is, can we take full advantage of the governor putting a halt to the congestion pricing process? And the speaker, Mr. Heastie, did say a while back that whatever is done is going to be voted on by the legislature, and that wasn't on the table originally. So we're working with legislators, not only our own, but people outside of our area, because just recently, I think it was Blake Washington, the budget director, who said there is a possibility that there would be a different pricing structure. Well, we don't want any pricing structure on our side of the river.
Right.
So it would be great if the $15 was lowered, but we want to see exemptions on our side of the river. So that's something that we are really pressing throughout, not just our own county and our region, but also the state, trying to reach elected officials who will have to vote on this. So that's a very important one for us.
One of the things that we have seen work is when your organization and our organizations and other business membership organizations can form coalitions. Right. So it's not just a Rockland issue. It's not just a Westchester issue. It's an issue that's going to affect economic development throughout New York State. Some of the coalitions that you've been engaged in where you've taken leadership roles, how has that worked?
Well, when I was offered this job, I shared with the people on the panel that Rockland was a very parochial county. This gentleman might agree with me, although it's less so today.
He's pointing to our engineer, who I think is from
Rockland
County.
I'm terribly sorry. That's right. And we had to take a look at how we function, and our future wasn't necessarily to our south, but to our north. We needed to look north into our region, into Albany, where we weren't considered players. I believe that all of New York State has a need to look south to New York City, so that's a given. But for Rockland, we needed to expand elsewhere. And over time, that has happened. But I also saw that I don't have a research staff, for example. So it was a natural to get involved with the State Business Council. And for over a quarter of a century, I have just lauded these people for the help that they've given us. And they've made me better at what I do. But we also belong to the National Federation of Independent Businesses. We also belong to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And we have a very close relationship with Pattern for Progress, which is a think tank in the Hudson Valley that has reached beyond the Hudson Valley. Both Jonathan Drapkin, who recently retired from that position, and Adam Bosch, who has it now, are good friends, and there's an awful lot of communication that we have. Recognizing that there are people out there that know more than you do in certain areas, and being willing to go to them for help and being willing to give what you might have, that they might need, I think it's very important to people who are involved in advocacy.
Well, and again, coalitions, there's strength in numbers. Yeah. And you're right. If you can share resources and you can broaden your outreach. And we had one of the shows that we do at the Podcast Network, we had Adam Bosch as one of our guests. And he, that Patterns for Progress continues to really push out important information that not only we as advocates need, but also our elected officials need to see. The real statistics, real numbers, and everything else like that. I got to ask, because you have now probably served under or worked with 4 or 5 different governors. in Albany. I know when I joined the New York State Assembly, Mario Cuomo was still governor. Talk to us just a little bit about what you've seen in Albany, the changes that you've seen, the changes that have made it more challenging at times.
I had to think for a moment on this one because this is very important, and it has changed. Albany has changed. I think there's more protectionism on the part of the leaderships, that they're not necessarily as accessible as other governors had been. But we also had some strange situations with governors who have left office, some a couple very quickly, and Mario, 52. I have a pair of cufflinks that say 52 and 56 on them, and they were given to me by Andrew Cuomo, and that to me is a very special gift that I had gotten from Governor Cuomo. There was a huge difference between Mario Cuomo and Andrew Cuomo in the way they address their positions. And it's even different today. Used to be when committee chairs were assigned, I would go up to Albany and walk into an office, and I would carry with me some flowers or a box of donuts for the staff. And I'd like to see your boss, who doesn't know me from Adam, but I'd just like to introduce myself. And I used to be able to do that. Not as easy to do that today.
Yep. No, it is. There are a
And
lot
I
of
missed
roadblocks.
that.
Well, it actually brought some goodwill, as well as a good way to begin a conversation. And staff is very important too, because they're the ones on a daily basis who are working on those issues. Yeah, it's changed dramatically. Obviously, there's been a huge shift in the political landscape in Albany. With Democrats controlling not only the governor's office, but both the Senate and the Assembly, and the progressive wing of both of those parties with their agendas. Right. Have also made it a challenge to the business community. And one of the things that I know you have always tried to do is to not lose sight of the fact that members of the Assembly aren't on Main Street every day. They're not in the businesses that you represent, and you bring those voices and their concerns to them and hopefully have a dialogue.
There was a majority leader who once stopped a meeting that I was at, had nothing at all to do with the position I have now. It's one of the earlier ones, and asked me to go outside the Assembly chamber. And he said, "Al, you have to remember something. In Albany, even our adversaries are still our colleagues." And I've never forgotten that. That was one of the most valuable pieces of information. That was early on for me, and that was a valuable piece of information. And some of the strongest relationships I had started from contentious beginnings. I'll even name it, Robin Schimminger. Robin Schimminger and I even forgot what it was we were fighting about, but he became one of my closest friends.
And he was an assemblyman from up in Buffalo area, correct?
Yes, up in Erie County.
Yep.
As opposed to, some of the others like Billy Larkin, who I had known 35 years, even before, I got these positions. But it's not as easy today to establish those relationships, and it's not as easy today as to find a common ground with elected officials with whom you have a disagreement.
Yep. It's a challenge, and it's one that we have to work on. Our guest this afternoon has been Al Samuels, who's the president and CEO of the Rockland Business Association. We're just grateful at the Business Council of Westchester to have a partner like the Rockland Business Association, because as we've talked about this afternoon, that partnership continues to help us get our messages out on behalf of both of our organization's members. I'll begin and end. I'll end as I've begun. Rockland County has been blessed for these 30-plus years, and will continue to be blessed by having an advocate like Al Samuels. He has the knowledge, he has the passion, and he definitely has the street smarts. Al, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
This has been a pleasure. Has this been a half hour?
It went fast.
It went fast.
We'll have you back.
I wanted to get in that line when we were joking about the Politics Unplugged.
Yeah,
And I
go
said,
ahead.
you know what? We got to replug it in.
We do have to replug it
Yeah,
in.
we got to plug it in somewhere.
Al, thanks for joining us today. We hope everyone will tune in to our next episode of Advocacy and Politics Unplugged. This is John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for the Business Council of Westchester. You've been listening to the Business Council of Westchester's podcast network. Be sure to check out the BCW Podcast Network's expansive lineup of shows: Leadership Unleashed, What's Trending, the Member Spotlight, WIN, the Innovation Roundtable, and Advocacy and Politics Unplugged. Stay tuned to our next episode of Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, premiering next month. The Business Council of Westchester is the county's largest business membership organization focusing on economic development and advocacy. With over 1,100 members, it is our mission to work for the profitability of our members and prosperity for the Westchester community. To learn more about the Business Council of Westchester, please go to www.thebcw.org.